Hi, I'm Siago Mabola, the educational psychologist at St. Mary's DSG. I recall a time when we had a death in the family. I went home that week and we had guests daily coming to pay their last respects and offering comfort during possibly the worst time in our lives. As difficult as that time was, we certainly found comfort in having masses around us, and for a brief moment, we were not so lost in our grief and sadness. There were moments we found ourselves smiling, lost in conversation about unrelated topics. On the day of the funeral, we had masses in attendance, and again, the presence comforted us. We saw the far-reaching impact of our departed on other people's lives. After the funeral, we had what we call an after tears, socializing with those who came to stand and to cry with us. Members of the community and the family were involved in the catering, in the food, and the drinks were overflowing as we had a farewell ceremony for our beloved. This was a reality for so many of us, but COVID-19 has completely changed how we mourn, how we interact with others, and how our funeral services are run. Death is hard enough on its own, but death during these COVID times has become so complicated, especially because families and loved ones cannot all be together. Like death, bereavement is a part of life. It's a natural adjustment period everyone will go through as they learn how to live with the loss of someone or something valuable. I forgive you. I love you. Goodbye. These are three things that people want to be able to say and hear when someone they love is dying. The coronavirus pandemic and the regulations and restrictions put in place to stop it rob people from their chance. Knowing that our loved ones have experienced a traumatic death due to COVID-19 becomes a risk factor for us to experience complicated grief. Grief has been defined as a multifaceted response to loss, which impacts the emotional, cognitive, social, and behavioral responses to death. Complicated grief, however, is a response to a loss that is more intense and prolonged than usual, and it affects one's ability to return to normal. And I use normal in inverted commas because I'm of the opinion that one does not move on or get over grief, but one moves forward with it. When someone loses a loved one, psychologists often use a 5-step model to explain the whirlpool of emotions that people might face. The first one, denial. It helps us to minimize the overwhelming pain of the loss. As we process the reality of our loss, we are also trying to survive the emotional pain. This stage can initially help us survive the loss. 2, anger. We're trying to adjust to a new reality and we're likely experiencing extreme emotional discomfort. There's so much to process that anger may feel like it allows us an emotional outlet. 3, bargaining. When bargaining starts to take place, we often direct our request to a higher power or something bigger than us. 4, depression. It represents the emptiness we feel when we're living in a reality and realize that the person or the situation is gone or over. In this stage, you might feel withdrawn, you might feel numb, live in a fog, and you might not want to get out of bed. The world might seem too much and too overwhelming for you to face. You don't want to be around others, don't feel like talking, and experience feelings of hopelessness. The last one, acceptance. In this stage, your emotions begin to stabilize. You re-enter reality and you come to terms with the fact that the new reality is that your loved one is no longer coming back. It's important to mention that these emotions don't come one after another. The process is not linear. It's complicated and messy, but that is normal. In understanding the stages of grief, it can reassure a person who is grieving that they are experiencing something that is normal. It's important to treat the person going through grief or yourself with kindness, patience, understanding, keeping in mind that what you are experiencing right now will eventually not hurt as much. If you are supporting someone going through the process of grief, Don't try and push that person to the next stage or compare them to someone else. Each person will experience the stages of grief differently. Don't feel guilty or make someone feel guilty if they are stuck in a certain stage or they find themselves going back to a particular stage. The inability of not being with our loved one in their last moments on earth and the guilt experienced may affect our grieving process and once again expose us to the possibility of having complicated grief. In addition, not being able to observe cultural or religious practices and rituals is another risk factor. With regards to children, it's best to talk to them about death and the meaning of grief. Help children understand and identify their emotions so they can name their emotions. Tell them what to expect during this process. Answer any questions they may have, even if they have asked you before. Explain things in an age-appropriate manner. To do this, you can use books or pictures or music. Don't assume they don't understand the concepts or that they're too young to understand for that matter. Remember, children, even infants, are highly perceptive and will pick up on the emotions displayed in the house. So talk to the children, include them in the grieving process. If you as a parent or a guardian are too overwhelmed to talk about this with your child, find someone like a family member to help them through this process. While social gatherings are not allowed and funerals have been limited to 50 people, you can still support your loved ones. You can use technology to stay in touch, like phone calls, text messages, or video chats to check in on loved ones who are grieving. Find out from your loved ones how you can support them virtually. Gather virtually by hosting or joining an online memorial service before the funeral to honor a loved one's memory. Plan a program for the virtual event. Live stream a funeral service so that more relatives can join in to prevent overcrowding. Host a virtual funeral reception after the service to provide an opportunity for loved ones to reflect. Give the family members an opportunity to share any memories or pictures. Have a moment of silence and consider a virtual toast to honor the memory of the loved one who has departed. Set up an online memorial page or a family group using social media where you can share memories and encourage each other during such a difficult time. Social distancing does not mean social disconnect. It is important that we stay engaged through online platforms. Connecting via Zoom or Facebook Live and other platforms is not ideal, but it is the best way to connect right now. It's important to grieve, to not distract ourselves from our reality, to make time and space to feel and experience the emotions. What we're talking about today is not just the loss of a loved one, but also people around the world are grieving the loss of their day-to-day lives and the plans that they have made. They're also living in expectation of what they might come to lose, whether it's their income, their health, or their loved ones. Micro and macro grief. We have big grief like the loss of a loved one and smaller grief like having lost a job or having to postpone a wedding. But one does not take away from the other, because the person that is experiencing that smaller grief is ultimately experiencing grief. We often want to fix it. We want to feel better and take the pain away. But one of the most important things we could do is to create time and space for the grief. We fix what is broken, but with grief, there's no need to fix because what we're experiencing is natural. In closing, when we lose someone close to us, we say that a part of us has died with them. I invite you to reframe that statement and say, a part of them lives in you. It is then up to us to determine how we will honor their lives and their memory. If you or anyone you know is experiencing grief, please reach out to a family member, friends, or seek professional help. There are wonderful resources out there, such as sadac.org for more information. Parents are welcome to contact the school to inform them of grief in the family so that we can best support you and your child.